It's a special episode of Daily Delivery, counting down the 10 best moments in Minnesota sports in 2023. Jeff Day from the Star Tribune is with me. He is kind of my partner in crime. No partner in, I guess we don't commit crimes on
crime. Yeah,
these are not a crime to rank teams, rank things, but you were kind of my go-to in these kind of like ranking draft kind of things. I think we do these well. We bounce things off each other well. We're gonna do the top 10 moments of the year in Minnesota sports in draft form. I won the pre-selected right to pick first.
Yes.
We did a random number generation. I asked you. I picked a number between 1 and 100. I asked you if it was above or below 50. You took above. It was 42. You trusted me, which I appreciate. And it was you didn't even need the screen grab, didn't need anything. You just that's the trust we've built up on these podcasts over the last several months. Jeff, are you excited? Are you excited for this?
Yeah, I think I've yet to win one, so I should kind of. I think we spread them out far enough that I kind of forget that you always win.
I tried. Well, the first one we did, I tried to give you the first pick in both, but you're like, no, you take one. Okay.
I do think the last time you and I had a conversation that would be sort of, whatever you call it, sort of just conversational versus reporting based, was on Karl Anthony Towns. And I'd just like to say that since that conversation, when you said that he wasn't a good basketball player,
he wasn't a good basketball player.
He's been phenomenal. Well, whatever you said, I can't even remember. But anyway,
you know who's been really good since then too? Naz Reid.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, let's keep it. Come on, we're going too far. Okay,
they're great, right? They had a great 2023.
I think they'll be a part of this.
Yes, they might in fact show up in this top 10 list. But yeah. So we're gonna do this in true draft form. We're gonna go. We're gonna start with the very best. So we're gonna go like 1 to 10 essentially. We're not counting down from 10 to 1. We're basically counting up from 1 to 10. So Jeff, if you're ready. My number one moment, it gets kind of like squishy in here because I feel like a lot of these things could be components of a larger one, and we can still pick, I think, a bigger thing than just this moment within this framework. But I gotta say, to me, the biggest moment is Royce Lewis going back-to-back home runs, his first 2 postseason at bats, kind of signaling that something is different here. And we started to see it with him with the grand slams, something like that. Like, I'm asking all these Twins people who I know, like, what is, who is Royce Lewis? Like, what is his place already? Even though he's only played like, 100 games, whatever it is, because he's been hurt so much. Like his leadership, his kind of like get on my back kind of mentality. Like, I was like, is he like their best leader since, fill in the blank, and like Lavelle Neal, who knows the Twins as well as anybody's like maybe Torrey Hunter, and he like mentions Kirby Puckett, and I'm like, okay, yeah, like that's kind of what I'm thinking, but it's like it's too soon, but it's not too soon. And then he hits 2 home runs in his first 2 playoff at bats, and that got target field to a point where it hasn't been, at least in the postseason, probably ever.
It was. I wondered if this would be your first. I think it's the right pick, and I think it is a moment. It was the feeling of a collective fan base that I think we all sit on pins and needles as Twins fans in the postseason, waiting for a moment. And it has been so difficult to find for all of these years. And there were so many things that went into winning those games and winning a playoff series at home. But I think that moment was so electric, and it was like an afternoon game. I went to two playoff games at Target Field, and was amazed at the atmosphere. And maybe there's something going on right now with the Minnesota fan bases kind of taking ownership of wanting to show their passion, wanting to show their investment. You're seeing it with the Wolves. The Vikings have always kind of had it, but it just feels like, the Twins fans came to that moment, and then Royce Lewis was right there to deliver. And it was the second home run to me was one of those things where you're levitating as a fan of a team, and to see a player make that move, like you said, especially so young, it just felt like not just a moment for the season, but kind of a moment for the franchise. Like, wow, this is when personality, career, legacy, all of those things start to get built, and you go, well, what can a player like this be? These are the special moments that make that happen. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, I kind of come at some of this from with the Twins, like it's also all of the losing they had done up to that point. And just the feeling of somebody kind of going, well, we're going to be done with that for the time being. Those are special moments in sports, for not just for the team, but for an entire fan base.
And I think kind of coming off of, there was so many years where we heard about, here's the next wave. It's Byron Buxton and it's Miguel Sano. These are the guys, right? Sano signs as a 16-year-old, kind of comes through. He's got this immense power.
Yeah.
Byron Buxton, number 2 overall pick, back in 2012, something, I think 2012, over a decade ago, kind of comes through the minor league system. You see the breathtaking talent for both of them. You see it in stretches for Sano with the massive power, with Buxton with the 5 tools, but none of them really have had those moments. And then both of them, by way of the things that happen over the years, but whether it's, underperformance, injury, things like that, Buxton can't stay healthy. Like they don't quite get to that point. And so people are kind of like, okay, well, Royce Lewis is the next great thing. Like, is he really though? Like, is this, I'm ready to be disappointed again. And then he's not disappointing at all. In fact, he's everything they wanted him to be.
Yeah.
So far.
Well, and that's the thing. I was thinking about this because I think you said earlier, like, he's played a limited number of games. And this is the joy that you and I have had conversations about prospective talent and the moment that a player starts showing what they're capable of. And now everything will probably start to segue into a different kind of expectation. Yeah. What can you do over the course of a season? Can you stay healthy? Can you play? But all of that was forgotten in the moment. He had been injured. I mean, that was part of the question was, is this guy even going to play in this game? Right? Like, wasn't he didn't play to end the regular season. I'm not misremembering, am I? And then he comes out, plays and hits 2 home runs. And it's just like, wow, this is like you said, it's sort of the explosion of that expectation. I mean, I think for a number 1 overall pick, his minor league career didn't have some of the buildup that you saw with other high-level Twins draft picks like Mauer or Buxton, or, I think everybody was kind of aware that Royce Lewis had a ton of talent. But the way that it came to manifest sort of didn't follow the traditional first round number 1 overall pick trajectory. And now everybody is kind of pulled back into, this guy might be the real thing. He might be a franchise altering player. And it really came through in game 1. I mean, it's the whole reason that people love sports is that exact thing. So it's a perfect number 1 moment to me, because I can't think of anything, even, we have had some players recently. It's a real wave of young, talented Minnesota professional athletes. And this was one that to me kind of caught me off guard as a fan. I think that his explosion was thrilling and gives them, it's like when people look to next season, it's like, well, everybody's going to be excited because they're losing some pitchers. They're going to have to figure some things out, but people are going to be extremely excited just to watch this guy play.
There's a term, the paradox of potential, that I read in a book several years ago. I think it was about higher education and just how it's kind of paralyzing to have in some cases to have so many opportunities, but also in the case of an athlete that you're watching where you expect so much of them, and there's like this, and as long as you can only imagine what they're going to do, the possibilities seem endless. When they start actually doing those things is when it becomes kind of scary. Like, well, are they really that good? Like as long as it's just potential, people are excited about it. It's when it transcends into that next area that it becomes, material. It becomes harder to kind of wrap your head around. But with Lewis, it transformed quickly into this thing where, like you said, where it was like surprisingly, like all of a sudden, like, wow, he's really that good? Like he's that guy this fast, even though he's been hurt, even though all this, like he shouldn't be this good yet because he's missed all this time. And yet here he is.
Yeah. The paradox of potential, I think is a perfect title for a memoir. You know what I mean? Maybe for somebody who didn't quite get there, I think we'll just wait and see. We should do a list of the 10 people who should title their memoir, The Paradox of Potential. But yeah, no, it's 100% accurate point. And that's exactly what I mean about
Yeah.
he's about to segue into that next space.
Yeah.
And that's exciting too, because the great players take that moment and then build and build and
Yes.
build and do something with it. And but yeah, it's the if you would have told me who's going to be the person to take Target Field and explode it and take the Twins and win a playoff series and beat a good Blue Jays team, I don't think at the start of the season or even midway through the season I would have pointed to Royce
No.
Lewis. It's like
No.
he took his moment and absolutely crushed it. So
Yes.
yeah.
Pick
Okay.
number 2 is yours. What do you got?
Well, this is interesting because these are moments we're talking about, and
Yeah,
so
it's tricky. Like we're gonna like it could get squishy. These are not hard to find borders, but yes.
but I'm going to strictly say this based on the moment of
Okay.
it and the feeling of a moment, and I'm going to go with Joshua Dobbs' first 2 games with the Vikings. I think that was. Even though we are now just a few weeks removed from it being over, it is done. But if we are not talking about sustained story of the year, we're talking about the best moments. And there is nothing like what was essentially a backup to a backup coming in and doing things that make you feel like, oh my gosh, did we just find it's like finding a magic bean or something, you know.
Yeah.
I've been Jack and the Beanstalk, I guess. But that to me is an electric moment as a fan, much as a superstar grabbing a hold of something and saying, I'm going to be that guy. I think a player coming in that you have low expectations for, and you're just like, well, can it even stay afloat?
Right.
He was the story in the NFL for 14 days. And that's such a thing, you know. It's
I absolutely agree. And there was like someone wrote a column like, is he going to be the most attractive free agent quarterback next offseason? Like that, people were like swept up in Dobbs mania, the Pastronaut, like, and it was you were worried that it was going to be short lived, but you wanted to ignore it. But I think this was high on my list too, so I'm with you on all of this.
Yeah, and I have other things that meant more to me that I think are going to be more impactful long term. But I just think that the feeling of watching him take over those games, and I think there were all the stats about quarterbacks who ran and threw for a touchdown in their first 2 games with the team, all this stuff. He just was doing things that made you wonder if not only could the Vikings sustain without Kirk Cousins, could they be better? I mean, these were real conversations people were having.
Yes, and not for not unreasonable ones.
We're not given what he was doing. I think it was just such a. It'll be a moment that'll probably be lost to history, but I also just loved it. It was one of those times where you were reminded of the joy that social media brings out in sports following. It just was people, just posting about this thing as though, again, you're getting this magical feeling as a fan that you have struck some kind of gold. And it was a moment. I think it's a defining moment of the year. And it might not mean anything in 12 months from now, but in that stretch of time, I can't think of many things locally that really captured the entire imagination of the state. Although there's one thing, then who I am as a person, so I'll acknowledge that the thing I skipped to pick this really hurt my heart. But I just can't. 2023 to me, Joshua Dobbs and that moment was a core part of it.
Yeah, it was pure joy. Like it was unexpected success. You'll never get better than that in sports. Like it is one thing when a team that you pour a lot into and then they come through. There is a lot to be said for that. It feels like there's more on the line. You're more emotionally invested when a team has been that good. But like when something catches you by surprise, kind of like what we talked about with Royce Lewis in the first pick, when something kind of catches you by surprise and you're like, I was not expecting that. Like Dobbs in that Atlanta game that he comes into, if we remember, it started out terribly. Like he fumbled a couple times. He looked like completely discombobulated, but then he starts scrambling. He makes some big plays with his feet. He converts that 4th down on the winning drive where he gets out of trouble and runs for a first down, throws the winning touchdown pass, comes out and totally dominates the Saints, especially in the first half. Like he was doing things. People were like that. Chris Collinsworth was comparing him to Patrick Mahomes during the Denver game. Like everything turned kind of at halftime of that Denver game, and then all of a sudden it was like the other half of Josh Dobbs. But for like 2.5 games, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, and the other part of it too was this element of I think there was something to be said about the way that people were talking about his mind, his process, this kind of very intellectual quarterback, and Kevin O'Connell calling the game like in his ear as he's walking to the line and adjusting play calls in real time. And like, he doesn't even know the playbook and he's leading these comebacks. And it had so many narrative strands to it. And the fact that it did flame out so hard almost, again, adds to the moment of it. It was like lightning in a bottle. And, so many people in the aftermath of it said, well, that's why quarterback is an extremely hard position to play and all of those kind of things, and why sometimes backups are backups. And you think about the great lightning in a bottle. I mean, the one that will always stick with me, the greatest example of this period was Nick Foles.
Yeah.
Where you're like a quarterback getting hot, and not only getting hot for a period of time, but carrying you to a Super Bowl victory. I mean, that was, I think, the energy around this Dobbs thing. Like, man, if they get Justin Jefferson back, and all of a sudden it's like, this guy's doing this, what can this team look like? The fact that that didn't happen steals some of this, but I refuse to downgrade, like you said, that first stretch of time.
Well, and my number 3 pick is kind of in a similar vein, not as much of a flash in the pan, but like the rest of the season didn't become what anybody wanted it to become. But I don't know if I saw a better play than Daniel Jackson's touchdown catch for the Gophers against Nebraska in the opening Big Ten game of the season. The Gophers were, at one point, they were down 10-3. Like, if you look at all the win probability, like Nebraska was like 95% they're going to win that game. And it's, the Gophers get the ball back on a turnover. They drive down, they miss a play. So it's 4th down, and there's the pass from Calic Manis to Jackson in the corner, kind of like the side corner of the end zone. And when he caught it, I was like, well, he caught it, but there's no way he was imbalanced. There was no way. But he somehow got like his opposite foot. Like, I still don't know how the physics of it worked, but he made the catch. They tie the game. They end up winning when they get another turnover and the winning field goal. They beat Nebraska. It felt big at the time because we didn't think Nebraska was all that good. It turned out Nebraska was a little bit better than we thought they would, but we certainly thought the Gophers could be Big Ten contenders. For 2/3 of the season they were, until it all fell apart. But that play, that moment, I'm not the world's foremost, follower or watcher of Gopher football, but that moment was like, that was one of the best plays I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think the catch was, again, yes, the part that you get right is that I felt I was watching that game. I'm not a large follower of Gopher football either, but I was watching that game, and it's like you're opening with a Big Ten opponent. I remember that had kind of a unique energy.
It was a night game too, right? Was it a night game?
Yes. Oh yeah, it ended very late.
Friday night maybe, or like it was a special. It wasn't. I don't think it was a Saturday night. It was Thursday.
I think
or Friday.
Like a Thursday. Sometimes they do those Thursday games around Labor Day. I can't remember, but anyway, yeah, when. The fact that not only that they get the score on this miraculous catch, but then they very quickly get a turnover, win the game. It's like, what just happened? I mean, the game, so many football games this year to me have been trash for 6/8 of them, and then they just light on fire in the final couple of minutes. And this was another example of that, where it's like, God, this is ugly. Like, this is just a nightmare of Big Ten football. There's no energy. There's no offense. We're just trading punts all day. And then boom, because what was the final in that game?
13-10. 13-10.
Okay. So 13-10, and they scored 10 points in the final minute.
Yeah,
so
more or less,
they had 3 points the entire game. And so that was the other part. It just had that feel of this Gopher team not producing anything. And so, again, you talk about lightning in a bottle. You talk about that just, oh, my gosh, I can't believe what just happened. Yeah. That catch had it. And it was a miraculous, one-of-a-kind
unbelievable catch.
Unbelievable catch. And so, yeah, I think it's a good point. I think it's so much of this stuff is what I love about sports, and what's hard to talk about it because you want to naturally sort of then digress into what came of the season and all of that. But in that moment, week one, it just felt like, man, that was a humongous win on one of the best receptions you'll ever see. So, yeah,
I might have also given you a chance to pick the team you like the most. So,
thank you. Well, so okay,
number 4 pick.
We're number 4. Yes. So this is I had a couple of options here, and I'm going to pick one that I think we could argue both season and game. But I'm
Okay.
going to pick the Timberwolves win over the Boston Celtics at home.
That was on my list. Yeah.
Okay, and this was an overtime win on November
Yep.
6th.
Yep.
This was early in this season, this miraculous season that his I feel like I'm accepting the Best Actor award at the Oscars because this is an emotional moment for me. But this season that has changed my life, where the Wolves are an incredible cohesive team all of a sudden. That win to me was the kicking off point of this. It was not just the game. It was not just Anthony Edwards taking over in overtime, doing things that made you feel like this man is going toe to toe with an NBA, one of the best franchises in the NBA. It was also the crowd. I just remember thinking something is happening here. The Wolves fans have come full throat to this season in a way that is so special if you care about the NBA in Minneapolis and Minnesota. Just that entire sort of it's not just one thing, it's a cumulative effect that makes it a moment for me. It is the moment I will point to if they have great success this season and go far. It is the moment I will point to if Anthony Edwards has a great career and as he's already developing it. But if it continues on and this is a lasting part of his legacy, I think you can point to games or a moment like this and say it's when things change. It's when it started to feel real and palpable. And it was just one of, and they've had other ones. Their win against Miami was absolutely incredible. They beat Denver. They've had some games, that quietly have been great. For some reason, that Boston game, it just was like everybody was aware of it. And it was a sort of, I think, a turning point of the year. It was, at that point, they win that game. They win into that game 3-2, right? They've gone 17. That's right, yeah. They went 17-2. Okay, after that game, or 17-3, whatever it was. But I'm just saying they get on this roll after that game, and I think it's because that game told them something about themselves, told their fan base something about what the team was, reorganized what they thought was possible about their late game execution and who they can hang with and what kind of teams they can beat. And so, anyway, to me, so far. And maybe no matter what, I think it might be the point I look to this year because we're going to enter a new calendar year with the Wolves. That I would say that was the moment. It was kind of the buildup from the playoffs the year before, and this question of what can this team be if they're healthy. All of those things played out. It played out in that overtime win.
I absolutely agree. And that was the game that I had picked out on my list if I was going to pick out a moment for the Wolves. It did feel like that one more than some of the other ones. And it's a long season left. There's going to be, in 2024, there's still going to be 50 plus games for them to play against a lot of good teams. There will be, there have to be more moments than that if it's going to be a successful season. But that was the one so far, you're right, that kind of showed me, okay, this feels different. We've had a lot of this feels different moments so far. And some of them were even just like playing okay, but still being good enough to beat a bad team on the road. Like even those are important moments. Those are important moments. Those are a little bit more pedestrian. Like, hey, they didn't have their best game, but they, Charlotte was pretty good that night, and they won at Charlotte. Like those are the ones that like
and that New Orleans win. Yeah,
at the end of the year, those are going to matter just the same in the standings, and those are the difference between a 2 seed and a 6 seed sometimes, and that's. With the margins being what they are, that's going to be vital to them. Yeah,
I think it's. I'm glad that you kind of agreed with that. I think a lot of Wolves fans look at that game and think it was just special. It was just it was a riot in Target Center. It was like when Ant was hitting those shots, and it just felt like there is nothing anybody can do to stop him right now. There's something about it's just like Royce Lewis hitting those homers. It's like. It's a player. They always say like it. I think the call is like he's on a heater, which I think is one of the great lines. But anyway.
And that was the game Towns fouled out of, right? That was the game that prompted me to write the post that got us going on the whole Nasri Towns.
That's right. So it
Yeah.
had a lot going
Full
for it.
circle. Full circle.
Yeah.
All right. I got to go back to the Twins for number five, and I got to go back to the playoffs again. Just it wasn't one specific play, but maybe the Carlos Correa made two or
Mm.
three incredible defensive plays. He was great offensively in the playoffs, but the play that it was either the play at the plate or it was the pickoff with Sonny Gray in game two. And someone mentioned this on social media. There was a couple of different moments, so maybe it's a little cheating, but I'll say the pickoff play. But there's also that play at the plate where they cut down the runner. He made that amazing throw,
Yes.
kind of the double backup on that play.
Yes.
Just him elevating after such a mediocre, injury. He played through injuries during the regular season, but everyone was like, okay, Carlos Correa in the postseason is different. Royce Lewis, Pablo Lopez had a huge impact on finally winning a playoff series for the first time in 20 years, 21 years, 18 straight playoff losses, 21 years since they last advanced.
Yep.
Carlos Correa rising to that other level, and in those moments, especially defensively, that to me had to be number five on my list.
Yeah, it's funny, Lopez and the pitching staff sort of maybe gets a little shortchanged, but it's just the nature of it, right? Like you're talking about moments, not necessarily just like a super strong start or this feeling of keeping a team in contention. So I think your point is completely fair. And I also thought that because I'm trying to remember, we're talking game two, Toronto, right?
Game two, Toronto. Yeah.
Because I was also thinking, and I don't think I'll get to this because I think these two are two really good Twins, but I was also thinking about game two in Houston, which was a game where Correa had another phenomenal game and kind of came up with, I think he had, 3 for 4 and 3 RBI, just kind of carry. But there he again was this thing of, for me it was the throw to home. Actually, that was the one that to me was a moment where you're going, gee, good Lord, this guy just did something that it was like a Derek Jeter type play. Some people hate Derek Jeter, but you got to give the man his credit when something creative had to happen on the field or instinct had to take over and you just had to be in the right place doing the right thing at the right time, doing something sort of supernatural or completely above and beyond your standard baseball play. That's what Correa did there. And you're right about it, it's like you hear about it. Oh, the legend of Carlos Correa, this guy who can do it in the postseason. Again, it's why you had the Lewis emerging, and then you had Correa showing you exactly why they brought him in, why they paid him that money, and why they were like, yeah, maybe he's going to be injured, maybe this foot's going to be a problem, but we're going to give him some money because who else can make that play for you? And again, the Twins, I hope that this year is a building block for them. I hope it's like, again, much like we were talking about with the Wolves, where you point to these things as developmental sort of, I'm talking about a toddler, but
developmental milestones,
franchise milestones where you're like, this was when these things started to come together and people realized what they were capable of. I mean, you can tell that for Correa, that is instinctual. That man believes in his ability to make a gigantic play at the biggest moment. He wants to be at the plate. He wants to be in the field. He wants to have the ball roll to him when nobody is expecting an out and he's going to make an out. I mean, that's what makes for just legendary baseball players. That's, I look back at that game two in Houston and I remember sitting there thinking, are the Twins about to, is this about to go to that next level? Having him brought out that kind of excitement and that leadership feeling of somebody who's going to carry you. It didn't quite play out that way, but for a stretch of the postseason, it felt like, man, everything that Carlos Correa promised, he's bringing right now.
Grand Casino would like to take a moment and salute the true football fan. The passion, the hope, the anticipation, that incomparable feeling of winning. Grand Casino would also like to take a moment to remind you that you can find all that anticipation, thrill, and winning at Grand Casino. Grand Casino, let your story begin.
You're next, number 6.
Okay, I'm going to go with this. Now you're going to say, what in the world are you talking about, I think?
That's good. I like that. What are we doing?
And here's why I'm going to do it. It's something that I learned about. It's a moment that happened that then led me to learn about an athlete
that
completely changed my understanding of of a person and the sort of a sport, of a competition. So
Cool.
now you'll tell me if you know this, because there's no guarantee you know this, but Courtney Dauwalter, okay?
Yes.
This elite ultra marathoner. I will tell you the exact thing. It was a moment for me. So it's like, this is a moment for her, and it was a moment for me in terms of just learning about her.
Okay.
There was this video on Twitter of her running in the French Alps, and our own Bob Timmons, who's an outdoors reporter, put something together on it after it had happened. But she is running in this race called the Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc.
Right.
Okay. I've never heard of this. I don't know anything about ultra marathoning. I don't know who Courtney Dauwalter is, even though she had a distinguished prep sports career here in Minnesota and was a phenomenal athlete. It just goes to show, the blind spots that you have in certain things. But the reason it was a moment for me is there's this video of her running through the French Alps, and there is this crowd, this manic crowd of people waving flares, American flags, cowbells. I'm like, what am I seeing right here? Like, it's like when you see those videos of darts in the UK, and it's like this mass insane crowd going wild every time somebody hits, 318s in a row. It was this realization that there is a sport that a Minnesotan is the best in the world at, and can stake claim to maybe being the best ever. And doing things that have never been done. This was like the culmination of her winning 3 of these 100-mile races. And it led me down a path of learning about her and learning about the sport, and just kind of thinking about the different ways that, and part of it to me was an inspirational thing of like, this was not like her path. She came to this at a certain time. And like, so anyway, to me, it was just an exciting moment. I think a lot of Minnesotans, when they have been learning about this and getting to know her, and it just is like, wow, this is a whole different realm of sports that people are passionate about. I mean, those fans there, it was like something like a she comes running through. It's clearly like the end of the race. Everybody's going nuts. But it's like a returning hero coming home, and it's the scene of it all. And the camera pans, and you're just like, "Holy Lord, we're up in the Alps." It's like high altitude, and so anyway, this is a strange one. It's not Royce Lewis.
I like it though. No, I like it because this was the wild card that I couldn't find in the year. So I'm glad that you found one, because I was like game and stuff like that. So I'm glad you found one, and I know some about like ultra marathoning and running like that. I can't imagine running 100 miles. Like I've done a few marathons. 100. I've done a few marathons in my day, but I even like completing one of those and then thinking about going 4 times as far. I'm like, no, that's insane. That is so hard to comprehend the physical limits of that. And then to be not just doing that, but doing that at a level where your hope isn't just to finish and survive, but to thrive is amazing.
Well, and also I was watching it because I'm sort of what I would call uncomfortable on my feet. I have bad ankles. I'm always like kind of watching my step. I'm ready because I've twisted my ankle 1,000 times in my life. I need to start, lacing up like Steph Curry or something.
Yeah, brace up.
But this is not trail run. This is not like track run. This is mountain paths for 100 miles. Like I was like, are you kidding me? So anyway, wild card pick, but just one that it was kind of a selfish pick because it's like I love. It's volleyball did this for me too. It's like when I start learning about the excellence of Minnesotans in certain sports, and Jesse Diggins has done this for a lot of us, and so many. Curling had this moment where you're like, Minnesotans excelling in a sport that maybe was completely unfamiliar to the sport fan at large. This was one for me this year.
I love it. I'm going to go to high schools for number 7.
Here we
go to high schools for number 7. The finale, the last game of the 6A football season, which is the biggest schools now, Prep Bowl.
Yes.
Centennial 28, Edina 27. Love this game because it's 2 schools that aren't always in the Prep Bowl. Like back when I was covering preps, it was always Cretin, Durham Hall, and Eden Prairie. Lately, it's still been Eden Prairie a lot. Minnetonka's been good. Like there's kind of your standards of schools. Both teams were looking to win their first Prep Bowl title in history, I believe, and they both come in, and Centennial is kind of dominating the game more or less. They're up 28-14 in the fourth quarter, but Edina comes back, gets a touchdown to get within 28-27 with 16 seconds left. They go for two, and Centennial stops them at like the half-yard line, and that is how the game more or less ends. It's not the final play of the game, but 16 seconds left. It's ostensibly over. It's just basically run out the clock from there. I love when high school games. I've seen some amazing finishes in high school sports, especially when I was covering them. I saw Totino Grace like pull off this, amazing, not trick play, but it was like twice deflected pass where the receiver like did a front flip into the end zone to celebrate the win with no time left. Like it was desperation time. Like plays like better than the Minneapolis Miracle somehow, but just on a smaller scale. But I love when games like this at the prep level end on such a dramatic finish. I hate that a team has to lose, but it was an amazing finish.
Well, Chip Scoggins did that great Football Across Minnesota after that. After what was a really fun prep bowl, stretch there, about a coach taking that chance, going for two in that moment, and the drama of that, and sort of the confidence you have to have in that, even when it doesn't work, when Edina doesn't get that he still had the statement that it was something along the lines of like, I would do that 100 times and I do it again. It's like there's something really exciting about coaches that have that certainty of belief of what they want to do and how they want to handle a moment. And then for Centennial to stop it. I mean, that's the stuff where it's like the momentum of Edina is just carrying. And the idea that all of a sudden your team is going to reverse that momentum that quickly at the half-yard line. It's like, oh my gosh. I think the Prep Bowl is underrated. I had a closer tie to it this year because I am from Chanhassen. Now, when I grew up there was no Chanhassen High School, but now there is, and they also played a phenomenal championship game. And
they beat St. Thomas Academy, right? Is that what that was in the 5A game?
In a couple of, or in overtime. I can't remember like exactly all of the deep, but it was a similar thing of like just a heavyweight match going back and forth. And these games, for some reason, produce the drama every single year. There's
year. One or two of those games every year in the Prep Bowl.
Yes, that our last second touchdowns are just like, heaving back and forth and swings, radical swings. I mean, I think Minnesota has this, for me at least, I'm often amazed at how, because we have the pro sports landscape and it swallows up so much, and then beneath that you have the Gophers landscape, which is a whole other beast of fandom and multiple sports, spread across all different kinds of interests and stuff like that. And then you get down to college and to high school. I'm not even talking about St. Thomas. With all
like the smaller scrap, right?
And all the D3. But I'm just saying, it's like the landscape of sports here is crazy. And I think that our high school, it's one of the things I love about our paper. It's like we just cover high school athletics like it truly deeply matters to people because of stuff like this, where you got really exciting players and coaches taking risks, and these moments that are the best of the year, they always come out of these games.
All right, number 8 for you. We got 3 left.
Oh man, I'm surprised that this is moving as well as it is. Okay, this is going to. You tell me. Okay. I had a couple of choices here.
Yeah,
this is tough because I was really excited about this, and it didn't lead to the finish. But I think when the Gopher men's hockey team going down and beating Boston 6-2 to reach in the Frozen Four to reach the national championship, I think that was such a cathartic moment, and such a defining moment for the team. The problem is that it is quickly followed by an equally defining moment that was difficult and shocking and rushed the season to an end in a way that nobody was expecting. And so it was just one of those things where I was thinking about both Gopher men's and women's hockey. But for me, Gopher men's hockey, they had been trying to get back to this kind of place and to under Motzko, and to show what kind of team. And also, this was just I just don't think you can deny the emotion that was involved in this season for Gopher men's hockey, and just kind of this feeling of what that team meant to each other and to the state. And that win and its emphaticness and the feeling of in that moment of reaching the place where this program wants to be after so many years of dwindling attendance and these shocking photos at Mariucci and all of this stuff. It's, again, when we talk about moments, it's like, I am not a hockey fan. I don't know anything about hockey, but I was watching those games. I was deeply invested in those games. And I was so excited for that program to have that moment. So I just loved that game. I loved the sense of like when the tension is so high and you go out and you have a dominant performance and you just feel like you're showing what you're capable of. And that, that stellar line that they had that was like, it just was, I think that team was maybe I don't know. I think they'd be up there for the defining team in the state this year. Yeah. And I loved that moment. How they lost to Quinnipiac was probably the shocking moment of the year. Because remember, it was that face-off, and it was like,
and in Quinnipiac, they tied it fairly late too in regulation, right?
Yeah. I mean, and then they won it in 8 seconds.
Yeah, it was very fast. Yeah. It was like they took the puck, went down and scored, and it was over. Yeah, it
was beautiful. I mean,
it was a great goal. Yeah, I mean, Quinnipiac absolutely deserved it. They played great. It's funny. I had actually Gopher Hockey was going to be my last pick because I agree. It was hard for me to pick a moment. I think the series they had against Michigan and the game they played against Michigan in the Big Ten tournament, like I was going to pick those. One of those or kind of that swirl because it felt like last year, even though they'd had success in previous years under Bob Motzko, last year felt like the year because of the attendance, because the fans came back and packed the arena. That felt like last year was the year that Gopher Hockey was back. They were exciting. People wanted to be there again, and it finally felt like they were kind of past the WCHA griping. Like it took 10 years. It took a different kind of a special team. It took some new rivalries building, but it felt like last year, finally Gopher Hockey was kind of back to that point that it felt like they were at, not just from a success standpoint, but from a people caring about it standpoint.
Yeah. I think it's, like I said, it's kind of tough when you have this thing where it's like, oh, did the season end? But it's like, there's still the moment of it. Like you said, you're trying to pick I was trying to figure that out too. And I sort of it's like arbitrary almost, but you just say there was so many moments of this season where it felt like Gopher Hockey was back to being meaningful. And I think it'll be again, hopefully a thing that carries forward. But okay, so where are we at? That was 8?
That was 8. So I got 9. This could be controversial here because this isn't even so much Minnesota sports technically, but I'm going to say that one of the 10 best moments in Minnesota sports in 2023 was when Aaron Rodgers finally got traded out of the division. This was suggested to me on X, on Twitter, and I was like, well, wait a minute. There's been 30 years of quarterback torture in this division because of the Packers. You finally get rid of this guy out of here. You usher in the Jordan Love era.
Yeah.
Jordan Love is the perfect quarterback to be in Green Bay for the next 10 years because he's not going to be great. He's going to be just good enough for them to be okay. So I hope that, for the sake of the Vikings, for the sake of everybody, I hope that the Packers decide that they see just enough in Jordan Love to give him a contract extension, because if you're a Vikings fan, that is absolutely what you want. He is never going to be great. He would be the perfect guy to go 8-9 or 9-8 for every year for the next 10 years. So that, to me, you get him out of here. You get that kind of threat, that specter out of here finally.
This is a wonderful sort of, the holiday season, the end of the year, it should be a mixture of gratitude, melancholy, a little pettiness.
Schadenfreude, gratitude and Schadenfreude.
Yeah, and this is just
big fruits, the big the big tudes. Yeah.
The only thing that I'll say is this: when you lose Aaron Rodgers, you lose something that is a core part of what make for great fan moments, and that is an enemy.
True.
And that is the thing that is like, when you take him down, and that feeling of, when the Vikings play the Packers now, I get what you're saying. It's like you hope they have a mediocre quarterback, but it's like, boy, the Vikings better have a good one then, because what you don't want is just mediocre versus mediocre
True.
and no stakes, and everybody's just kind of going about their day. This has been a year of terrible NFC North play. I mean, this has been just sort
bad.
of, it's like there are little moments of good, like the Bears all of a sudden will look good. And then it's like a week later, it's like, oh, they're trash again. And the Packers all had a run. People are like, oh, the Packers might be. And then they're trash again. The Vikings going through, quarterback after quarterback in the wake of Cousins.
Right.
Everybody realizing how good Kirk Cousins was. That's a moment of this season for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get it. And there is something sweet about it, isn't there? There's something sweet about a fan base that you have just come to have. They took for granted what they have. Yes. I mean, that's part of it too. These Packer fans who would complain about Aaron Rodgers and sort of voice their displeasure with his playoff finishes. Well, enjoy yourself. Have fun. You know what I mean? Oh, go enjoy your day.
I'm kind of glad we're not ending on that one, though. I want to hear your 10th one because I think maybe we'll get off of, unless you're going to be petty too, which would be fine.
No, not at all. I mean, it's almost like I want to just dump things because I have a couple here.
What else do you got? What else do you got?
I got a couple. I thought that. Well, I'm going to pick one.
Yeah, pick one, and then maybe we'll do some honorable mentions or some kind of what got missed on the list. I'm
picking an athlete that I think over the past 5 years has become maybe. I think it's like, is she the best athlete ever from Minnesota? I don't know, but I think and Rachel Blunt deserves all the credit in the world for illuminating. Yeah. Our readership and our staff on how amazing this person is. But Jessie Diggins, she says gold in the 10-kilometer freestyle at the Nordic Ski Championships. It's never happened before. It's another cherry on the top of this career of hers that has come to define American skiing. And there's something about her that you just can't help but be thrilled by. And she also, I mean, this has nothing to do with this, but it's like she's been open and honest about what she has dealt with personally, struggling with eating disorder, being open about a relapse, and that doesn't have anything to do with the moment of her winning that gold. But it's like, this is an athlete that I think in time is going to come to be recognized as up there with Lindsey Vonn or any of the sort of international Olympic style sports that are maybe bigger internationally than they are at home. This is also a year where they're going to bring, or when is it that they're bringing one of these
soon?
Is it? But that's going to be in 2024, right? That's in yes. So anyway, my only point in saying this is that I just think that when I think of moments, I think about her and it's not quite the same as the Duwalter thing, because I just think Diggins has been in our collective consciousness a little bit longer. But it's like, if there's going to come a time here where you're going to look and go, was she the athlete of the decade in Minnesota? Like, where do you rank these people who are doing things that are just unheard of in the sport? And, Reagan Smith has some of this coming, and, Suni Lee came out of nowhere when she had her moment at the Olympics. Diggins, it's like, I think that this moment for her sport, for American skiing, it's like, this is one of the biggest moments of all time. You know what I mean? So I think it's a deserving spot on our list of what were the moments in Minnesota athletics. It's like, even if it didn't happen here, even if it happened to half a world away or whatever, it's like, this is worth celebrating, because it's just another moment of her incredible career. So
I like it. I'm glad you mentioned that one. That was on my list. I couldn't get beyond the pettiness of Aaron Rodgers, but I'm glad that
I love it. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I had Nafisa Collier and just what she did this year on my list. And if I had to pick a moment, I would probably, basically coming back like a year after becoming a mom. Like, she played a little bit at the end of 2022, but like, really, this was like her comeback season from becoming a mother. Like, her body having to completely like refocus, get back into this elite playing shape, and she has one of the best years that you could have. She delivers at a 26-13 in an elimination game to win at Connecticut, like a game after they lost by 30 in game one, to actually get them back here with a chance to pull a huge upset. They don't finish it up, but she had a huge game in that one too. Like, the season she had, the moments she had. She had 31 in that last loss to Connecticut. She had a phenomenal season, and she was definitely deserving of being in the conversation for. I just couldn't find like the one moment. If they had won that series or something like that against Connecticut, maybe
Right.
that would have stuck a little bit more in my mind. What else did you have on your list?
I did have Lynx. I had just Lynx overcoming that 1-7
Yeah.
start. And it's
Yeah.
kind of like Gopher hockey. It's like, well, where do you pick your moment here? But the fact that they were able to claw their way to the playoffs and do that, I had that too. I had the Wolves beating the Nuggets in Game 4.
I love that two of your moments
What?
were like the first 7 games of the NBA regular season.
No, 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 no. Game
Oh,
4 of the
game
NBA
4. Sorry, game
playoffs.
4 playoffs last year. Okay.
Yes. Yep. I was debating between going backwards in time and looking forward to what is hopefully, the start of a
Okay.
great.
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. Edwards, I think he had 31 or something in that. It was
Yeah.
an overtime win.
They almost blew that game.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
They like coughed it up in regulation, but still won in
Yes.
overtime.
Yes. Again, it's like these are the seeds. These are the seeds of what they're doing this year was planted in that series
Okay.
and planted in the offseason. And so I loved that. I had, what else did
Didn't
I
mention
have?
the Wild at all. I kind of feel bad. Like they had a good year last year. Like they made the playoffs. They won a couple playoff games. Like they're just not terribly interesting to me right now.
It's a tough, the Wild. Uh, I don't know if it's a Wild problem, if it's a NHL problem. I don't know exactly what the story is, but I think you're right. It's like it's what was your phrase earlier for the memoir title? The
Paradox of potential.
paradox. They are the opposite. So if that's the
Yes.
paradox of potential, they are the
The static known of the bland.
the crumbles of consistency or something.
Yeah,
It's
like we know exactly like exactly you feel like you know exactly what they're going to be every year, give or take.
Exactly. I mean, that's the part that to me, this is a team that has undergone a dramatic transformation in terms of personnel, coaches, everything. And you're sitting here going, I don't know. I don't know when they start to define themselves as something beyond what they've been the past number of years. So because we didn't touch I'm trying to think, did Minnesota United they fired the coach? That was a bad.
But, yeah, I mean, if we're talking about like biggest stories, like that's certainly one of the biggest stories. Like if we were framing this differently, like that makes a list. Like the Gophers changing women's basketball coaches and
100%.
getting rid of Lindsay Whalen, like that makes the list if you're just talking about stories. But yeah, I didn't feel like there was that moment for Minnesota United. They kind of overcame a slow start too, but they didn't even make the playoffs. Like they came up short at the end.
I do think that if it was biggest story, I think it'd be a neck and neck race for me between Twins winning a playoff series and Timberwolves hitting. The thing with the Wolves is you don't quite know where it's going, but it certainly feels like right now at this point of the year, it's like that's the story.
Yes.
It might, you know what it could be? It could become that it's the story of 2024.
It could be, these teams that split their years, it's hard, right? Like,
yes,
the teams that span, the Wild, the Wolves, things like that. Even the Vikings, like if they were great, like we wouldn't know until late January or February where this was
I was
all
looking
going.
at that when we were doing this list. I was like,
Yeah.
did they have any? I couldn't remember if they had any games that touched into January, and their final regular season game was, and then they lost to the Giants in January, and so they didn't really have a defining moment this season. And then the regular season this year hasn't been good. So
it's
been
the Dobbs. We mentioned Dobbs, like we got them into the list, but yeah, it's an interesting year, and it's a weird, it's hard to encapsulate it all, but yeah, I'm happy with our 10.
Wouldn't you say that the Twins playoff wins? It's funny to say because as we were doing this list, I was putting together. I'm like, I remember I was messaging you like, it's an interesting year for picking moments, but I would have to say the high moment was one of the highest moments of the last number of years. I can't think of any higher moments than those games at Target Field where you just felt like everything was coming together for the franchise. The Vikings haven't had a home playoff win since the Minneapolis Miracle.
Yeah. Wolves and Wild haven't won a series in a long time.
I don't know. I just was thinking about that, like that for a high moment, those Lewis home runs, those two games against Toronto, and even the 2 losses against Houston, where just in terms of the franchise and the direction of it, it's like, it's kind of funny to think in a year that feels down overall, the high point was pretty high. Yeah,
it was. And I think the biggest energy this year has been the Twins, the Wolves start, Gopher hockey surge, and then those Dobbs games. Like that's where I felt that the collective energy, like people are just really into it for however long it lasted.
It's funny though, because to me, I will say that the year, it feels like a year of with the biggest stories being kind of what's wrong, like what's not quite working with things, or like, and you have I think you have the Twins and the Wolves. We'll see about the Twins and what this next year brings and what that pitching staff looks like. And I think you have to be slightly worried about that, but
I'm worried about that.
Yeah, but it's, and the Vikings too, it's like you're going to enter an offseason where you don't know. I mean, you got Cousins as a free agent. What is this team doing going forward? If they cut him loose, what does that look like? And anyway, and you have a Wolves team that right now you're sitting here going, well, if people are healthy at the end of the year, and this team that we've seen early, all of a sudden this is going to become a Timberwolves town. It might already be a Timberwolves town. I mean, I don't know. But anyway, these are good things, but it's been an interesting year.
It has. Jeff, Day, always appreciate your help on these things. Hope you guys enjoyed the list. Feel free to reach out to us if you got ones that we missed. You can send those my way. You don't need to bother Jeff with that, but you can bother me with that. Tell me what we missed. But this is hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back with regular episode probably Tuesday, January 2nd. Won't have a show Monday because that's New Year's Day. That's still a holiday, things like that. But I think Royce and I will do our show Tuesday. Bunch of Viking stuff, all that stuff next week. So appreciate you guys. Appreciate it, Jeff. We'll talk soon.
Well, before we sign off, do you have any resolutions? You hitting anything? You got anything trying to fix about yourself?
Fix about myself. I just my resolutions for 2024. It's gonna be a busy year. I've got a lot of projects, a lot of things I want to do. So maybe some new wrinkles for the podcast. So I want to be present in all of the moments in my life when I am in those moments. I think I'm going to be busy, and I don't want to be distracted always thinking about the other thing I'm supposed to be doing. I want to be present in the moment when I'm doing the thing I'm doing.
It's probably the hardest thing to do.
Yes, especially as a parent. Like the context shifts of a parent. The context shift is something I read about in the New York Times recently. Like you're constantly being like pulled in different, like your brain is like you're doing one thing and then it's like, oh, you got to do this other thing right now because someone needs something. Like the context shifts. It's impossible to focus. But I want to be locked in on those in the present when I'm with my kids, when I'm doing a project, when I'm doing something else. I want to be in that moment in that time.
I often have these discussions with my wife because she says I can't multitask. And I say, I think that's a good thing. But I do get like where I'm late, my brain zeroes in on something. But the problem is, like you were just saying, I sometimes can't like I'll be sitting there like, singing a song to my kid, putting him to bed. And my brain is thinking about like go for volleyball, for instance, or something like that, or like some story I'm working on or some bit of information I'm curious about. And so that's a really good resolution. I will be curious. We can talk in a year and see how you did with that. And if you do succeed, we'll need you to start a new podcast where you share how you were able.
Michael Rand's mindfulness podcast, totally different direction. Your daily delivery meditation.
Oh my God.
How about you? Do you got anything you want to do this in 24?
It's a good question. I don't know. I think I'd probably like to continue to I've been getting better and better about not wanting things, I think, and not trying to, this will sound strange, but not wanting to always be looking to like improve elements of life, like just being content and okay with what I have, if that makes sense. Whether it's, I think part of living in our houses more post COVID and kind of, I don't know, even though I go into the office more, I'm reporting, things like that. I spend a lot of time in the house and I'm always kind of questioning things in my house. Like, oh, should I be doing something here? Like, oh, there's a crack in the ceiling. Do I need to get some putty? It's like, I want to learn to just not constantly be looking for something to do and try to find boredom again. I think it's like probably one of the things I've missed the most, having two young kids and working and the never ending, cycles of news and sports information. For me, it's like, there are times where I'm like, man, I used to be the best at being bored and just kind of being idle. And that has evaded me for a long time. So I'm thinking about that. I think it kind of goes to your mindfulness thing. It's like just letting life be and not trying to force it all the time. But then I'll get some notification or some phone call,
right.
or Taylor Lanford will enter the transfer portal
Yep.
when I'm at dinner on a Friday night, and I'm like, well, there goes all of that.
That was fun, but I
right out
know
the door.
it's a great point because I feel like there's um I think I fall into that trap sometimes, and I feel like I fall into that, always striving for more. And I feel like working from home more, and when you're commuting less or commuting less, and you're going fewer places, even though, like you said, both of us are out and about a lot more than we were 2, 3 years ago, certainly.
Yes.
But when you have kids, the pace of life these days does not allow for what I like to call the in-between spaces, those kind of moments where you're like, oh, there's no like cushion of 30 minutes where you're just like, oh, that time is unaccounted for. Like feels like so much of time is unaccounted for, and those in-between spaces are so essential. And I feel like sometimes like even a commute can be that because you're just kind of like in your own space a little bit. You obviously are focusing on the road if you're driving, but like those kind of moments where you're not doing a specific task, you're not working, you're not doing some other specific thing where you just can kind of sit and think and let the day process. I think we lost a lot of that. We need to get that back.
Well, I'm going to sound like a very basic boy here, but I got into doing this hour and 15-minute yoga class, and
Nice.
I've never been an exerciser really, and my wife was always into yoga, and I'd never tried it. She's been doing it for a decade plus. I finally try it, and this class that I went to, it's like the first 45 minutes of it are kind of high, a little bit like energetic, but not like boom, 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 not Lollapalooza in the yoga studio kind of energetic, but just moving more.
Right.
The last 30 of it are like these things where you just lay in super uncomfortable positions.
Yeah.
And then you get done and you lay on your back. I'm saying everybody who does yoga is like, why are you explaining yoga to me? But I have had moments in that stillness where I have like found emotional resonance.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn, dude, this is the stuff that I think any kind of pause, and I mean a real pause, a real deep-seated pause in your movement and your thought. It's like, man, there's all kinds of weird, unaccounted for emotional spaces in that it's like when it hits me, I'm sitting there going, well, I'm not doing a good job if this is all like pooled in there. You know what I'm saying?
But you are doing a good job if you're finding those spaces.
No, I agree with that.
But yes, but I get it. Yes, I get it.
Yes, yeah, but that you have to go like that it sits in these places where you're maybe not targeting it as much, and it's not getting activated as often, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it was just kind of a moment of awareness for me. Like, that's what I mean by wanting a little bit more of that. So anyway, What are we doing here? What is this?
I love it. No, this is
fresh
great.
air with
this
Terry
is like
Grove?
No, I just feel like this is like the extended cut of the top 10. The best moments in Minnesota sports. If you stuck around this far for this, which was a really interesting final 10 minutes, I enjoyed this conversation. Hope you guys did too.
Yeah.
I don't think Royce and I probably won't go into this same space on Tuesday, but hey, that's what we do here. We do all sorts of different stuff on Daily Delivery. Jeff Day, appreciate it. Happy rest of the year. Happy 24, and we'll talk to you soon.
Same to you, Ramball.